Hey, today we're going over this TREC 1 to 4 family residential contract. This is a contract for buying a resale home. It's a very common contract that we use here in Texas. It's not the only one, but it's the one that you will see the most often. So I'm going to go over it in a very high level view today. We're going to be skipping over some sections, but I'm going to point out the most important sections, and then in other videos we can go more in depth on certain topics. So here in section 1, we've got the parties to the contract, we've got the seller and the buyer, and it's very important that these names are your legal names and that they match, especially for the seller, that tax record that's on file. Section 2 here is the property. We have the tax record legal description here, and then the more common address down at the bottom. 2B and C, this basically describes what stays and what goes. So the easy way to think about it is if you need tools to remove something from the house, it's probably a part of the house and needs to convey. So that includes curtain rods, TV mounts, security cameras that are bolted in, things like that. If there are any exclusions to things that should convey but the seller wants to take, that goes here in section D, so it's another important section. We'll go down to the sales price. This is what most people are thinking about when they are looking at offers, but there are other things to consider, as you'll see in the rest of the contract. Here at the top is the cash that the buyer will be bringing to the table. So that could be the full purchase amount, or if they're financing, it'll be their down payment. Here in section 3B, if they're financing, one of these boxes will be checked, and then the amount that's being financed goes here in this section. And then at the end, we've got the full sales price. All right, section 4, leases. So we've got residential leases. That's what you think about if you've got a tenant in place. And then fixture leases are things like solar panels, anything that would be affixed to the house that's a part of the house but that is leased by the seller. And then in Texas, of course, there's natural resources leases, which would be all sorts of things when you get into the more rural areas, mineral rights and all sorts of things like that. So it doesn't come up too much in the city. Section 5 is important. This is earnest money and termination option. So here at the top in 5A, we've got your title agent here and the title company, their address. And then we've got the amount that you're going to be bringing to the table as soon as you go under contract, within 3 days after going under contract. And that is going to be 1 to 2% of the purchase price usually. It's negotiable, but that's usually what it is. And then the option fee, which is going to be an amount that you pay to have a certain period of time where you do your due diligence and you have your inspections. It's a time when you can change your mind and back out of the contract. And so you pay for that right, and you put that amount here. So that termination option that I mentioned, here goes the number of days that you've paid for up here. So for example, you could have 7 days for $350. All right, section 6, we've got the title policy. The title policy is an insurance policy that makes sure that you are protected, your ownership of the property is protected. So the seller or the buyer can pay for that insurance, and whoever pays for it usually chooses the title company. So that title company goes here. 6.8, this is if you choose to purchase an additional title endorsement, which I won't go into depth what that means here, but if you can choose to purchase additional endorsements, and the buyer or the seller could pay for those, and that would go here. All right, we can skip down to the survey. So sometimes this is, basically deciding how you get a survey and who pays for it. So sometimes the seller will have an existing survey that they'll provide to you with an additional affidavit, declaring that it's a true survey, that they haven't done anything to the property since that survey was done. Or the buyer can pay for the survey. You can waive the right to have a survey in some cases, but you usually have a survey. If you're working with a lender or a title company, they're almost always going to require you to have a survey. So this is how you are going to choose how that gets delivered to you. This section here about objections, this is about title objections, and I'm not going to go through that right here, right now. We can go through that in a different video, and I'm happy to talk to you about it in person. And we will skip all the way down to property condition here, because this trips up a lot of people. So you've got to be given access to the property. Utilities need to be on so that the buyer can do their due diligence through the contract period. So that is all spelled out here. And then here, 7B, this is regarding the seller's disclosure notice. So almost always, sellers are required to provide a disclosures notice. There are some exceptions, but 99% of the time, they have to provide the disclosure. So you can check here whether you've received it or not, or whether it needs to be delivered to you by a certain date. And then you say, okay, I'm going to accept the property as is, or in your offer in the contract, you can accept the property as is, provided that the seller do something. So if you notice when you're walking through a house that there's a huge hole in the wall and you want to make an offer, but you want the seller to fix that hole before you close, you can spell that out here. People get scared because when we say as is, that doesn't mean that you can't have a inspection, and if the inspection report comes up with something that we did not know before, maybe the AC is bad, I don't know, the water heater isn't working, then we can negotiate. So this, during your initial offer, when we're initially writing the contract, just means that we're accepting the property as is, as we see it, so everything that's visible. All right, we will skip down to 7H. So 7H is about residential service contracts. These are home warranty policies. So a buyer can purchase a home warranty policy on their own. They can also ask here for the seller to contribute a certain amount for that policy. Home warranty policies cover things that your traditional home insurance might not cover. For example, appliances, ovens, refrigerators, things like that. All right, section 8 here, we've got a broker or sales agent disclosure. You need to disclose, agents need to disclose if they're related to the seller, if they have any ownership in the property, anything like that goes here. And then we've got the closing. So we've got a closing date here in section 9, and it tells you what needs to happen at closing. And then section 10, we have possession of the property. So you can either get possession of the property upon closing and funding, so as soon as you sign all the documentation and money has been delivered, or there are things that you can do. You can do like a temporary leases if the seller needs more time to move out of their house, for example. So if you have an agreement like that, then you would check this box. We've got section 11. This is where you put any special provisions, anything that's not already outlined by the rest of the contract here. Section 12, we've got settlement and other expenses. So this section is about closing costs, about anything that the seller is going to contribute to the buyer. This could be closing cost credits, this could be repair credits. It also can cover buyer's agent commissions. So all of that is outlined here. And then we will skip down to notices. So this is buyer and seller's information. There's a million addendums that can be added to contracts. So you'll have these checked here if you have any addendums, and then that is it for the 1 to 4 family contract. Let me know if you have any questions. This was super high level, skipped over a lot of parts. I think I hit on the most important parts, but of course, every contract is different, every situation is different. So if you have specific questions, let's go over them in person.